Hello, boys and girls. So, for your homework today, you will be reading and following along while I read to you Satchel Paige. So, Satchel Paige is about a baseball player from in the past, and the genre is a biography. So, you know that this story is going to be about this person's life. Let's begin. We're going to start up here. Leroy Satchel Paige earned his nickname as a young man. He carried suitcases, satchels for passengers at the Union Station in Mobile, Alabama. Satchel was a natural athlete. People said by the age of 10 he could outpitch grown men. So in 1923, at the age of 19, he decided to earn his living as a baseball player. In those days, baseball was a segregated sport. African Americans were forced to play in their own leagues, separate from whites. As a semi-pro pitcher, Satchel developed his own unique style. He picked up a tip here and there, put his Satchel spin on it, and polished it off with a brand new game. Got so Satch began to think of his pitches as his children. The hesitation was his magic slow ball. The trouble ball caused all sorts of havoc. And then there was the B ball, which according to Satchel would always be where I want it to be. There's an odd way about his pitching. He would stand tall and straight as an oak tree on the mound. His foot looked to be about a mile long, and when he shot it into the air, it seemed to block out the sun. Satch's arm seemed to stretch on forever, winding, bending, and twisting, and then there was that grin. Then there was that grin he flashed just as he released the ball. It seemed to say, "Go ahead, just try and get a hit off that." Strike one! And you never saw it coming. I mean, 1 minute it was there, plain as day in his hand, and then, all of a sudden, strike two! It was in the catcher's mitt. The batter would strain his eyes, squint a little. Here it comes. Got it now. Strike three. Just like that. All over. Next batter up. Give it to him, Satch. Show your stuff, fans and teammates would shout, and he did, every time. Folks would pack the stands to see how many Satchel could strike out in one game. He made the crowds laugh with his fast talking and slow walking. A man's got to go slow to go long and far, he'd say. But mostly he made them cheer. Never in his 19 years had he heard a sweeter sound. The more cheers he heard, the more his confidence grew. A kind of confidence that made him call to the outfield with the bases loaded and the last hitter up to bat. "Why don't you all have a seat? Won't be needing you on this one." Wherever the crowds went, a good paycheck followed, so he made sure to keep them coming. After just 1 year, he was playing in the Negro Major Leagues for the Chattanooga Black Lookouts, and the folks were still cheering and shouting, "Give it to him, Satch! Show your stuff!" There were two major leagues back in 1924 when Satchel was called up. Because the white Major League ball clubs wouldn't allow blacks to play in their leagues, blacks had to create their own in 1920 and name them the Negro Leagues. The white Major League players enjoyed trains, hotels, hot meals, and short seasons. Negro League players were often refused meals in restaurants and rooms in hotels. They ate on the road and slept where they could, in train depots or on the baseball fields. They played 2, sometimes 3 games a day, nearly every day in a season as long as the weather would hold. And when the season ended in America, Satch went right on playing and traveling in other parts of the world. Life in the Negro League suited Satchel. He was a traveling man. One city could never hold him for long. He moved from Alabama, where he played with the Birmingham Black Barons, to Tennessee, where he played with the Nashville Elite Giants, and to Pennsylvania, where he played with the Pittsburgh Crawfords. From the first breath of spring till the cool rush of fall, he would ride. Sometimes he joined his teammates on rickety old buses, bumping along on back roads studded with potholes so deep players would have to hold on to their seats and stomachs just to keep from spilling into the aisles. But mostly he drove alone in cars that would take him wherever he wanted to go. The fans would always be waiting in the next town. Their wait could be a long one. He was never much for keeping anyone's time but his own. Once he reached his mid-thirties, the joys of traveling began to wear thin for Satchel. He found himself longing for a more settled life and the comforts of a home. In 1941, he finally found it in the warm smile and tender heart of Loma Brown. Satchel rested his travel-weary legs and happily began his second career as husband and father. But even though he had found what he thought he'd been searching for, it was only a year before he took to the road again with his first and only true love, baseball. His family would have to wait. Satchel's teammates were in love with the game too, and out of that love grew players better than anyone could dream. His teammates included Cool Papa Bell, a hitter who ran bases so fast if you blinked you'd swear he never left home plate. Oscar Charleston was an outfielder who could tell just where a ball would land as soon as it hit the ball. And then there was Josh Gibson, who some said could hit a ball so hard and so far it would land somewhere in the middle of next week. Because of his powerful hitting and home run record, Josh was sometimes called the Black Babe Ruth, but many wondered if Babe could have been called the White Josh Gibson. Back in 1923, when Gibson and Satchel were teammates on the Pittsburgh Crawfords, they were considered a mighty powerful duo. Posters for the Crawfords read, Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige, the greatest battery in baseball. Gibson guaranteed to hit 2 home runs, and Paige guaranteed to strike out the first 9 men. Someday we'll meet up and see who's the best, they would often joke with each other. In 1942, soon after Satchel's return to the road, they got their chance. And here's a picture of Josh Gibson of the Homestead Grays. It was September 10, 1942, the second game of the Negro World Series. Satchel's team, the Kansas City Monarchs, was in a heated best-of-7 matchup against the Homestead Grays, led by Josh Gibson. Towards the end of the game, Satch decided to raise the stakes. With 2 outs in the inning and 1 man on base, he walked 2 players so the bases would be loaded when Josh Gibson came up to bat. Someday we'll meet up and see who's the best, rang in Satch's ears as he prepared to face the man who would now determine the fate of his team and Satch's reputation. Satch called to Josh, remember back when we were playing with the Crawfords and you said you was the best hitter in the world and I was the best pitcher? Yeah, I remember, Josh called back. Well, now we're going to see what's what, Satch said. With a ball in hand and a grin on his face, Satch told Josh, I'm going to throw a fastball, let her high. Strike 1. Josh shook his head, tightened his grip on the bat, and resumed his position as he tried to stare into Satchel's eyes. But Satch stared straight ahead at Josh's knees. His coach back at the Mount Meek school had always told him, look at the knees, Satch. Every weakness a batter has you can spot in the knees. Now I'm going to throw this one a little faster and belt high, Satch said during the windup. Strike 2. In typical Satch style, he called in a mocking voice. Now I got you 0-2 and I'm supposed to knock you down, but instead I'm going to throw a pea at your knee. Strike 3. Josh never moved the bat. Satch slowly exhaled the breath he'd been holding since the windup. It was over. He had done what he'd come to do. Nobody's hit Satch's fastball, he said, through a smile as bright as the sun, and nobody ever will. And that's where we're going to end. Okay? So what you are going to do now, in class we went over this worksheet. about summarizing. Now, I want you to fill out this summarizing sheet. The somebody, who was this story about? What did they want to do? But something happened. Their problem happened, so they fixed their problem, and then what happened? So you're going to fill this out, okay? Make sure you put your name and the book title, Satchel Paige, and you're going to flip it over. And you're going to write me a nice 5th grade paragraph using the information from the first page. Okay, so fill this out. Put all of this information into a nice paragraph. You should have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences. We went over this in school, so this should not be new to you. Okay? And also, I would like for you at the bottom of my webpage to where the box says comment, I would like for you to comment your name and that you finished it. Just put your first name and say finished. Okay? And I will see you guys tomorrow.